Welcome to What Are You Even Talking About? A podcast where we talk a little bit about everything. Today's guest, she is a mindset and manifestation coach for up and coming leaders. She is second generation Filipino American, has a social justice, healthcare, and artistic background. She has often said, in hindsight, the array of experiences her life has prepared her for what she does now, creating change in the world one person at a time by guiding and training clients how to consciously create what they want in life and in the world through transformational work. Jennifer Asidao Querubin,
Mm,
please, or thank you for being on the show.
that was good, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. I worked hard on trying to get that name right. I just wanted to make sure I
Aw,
got it right.
I appreciate that.
So, how are you today?
I'm good.
Good, good. So we like to start the podcast with a question from the last guest.
Mm,
And they give it to, without knowing who the next guest is. So they give this blindly. And the question for you was, what brings you life and what gives you life and why?
oh, that's a good question. What gives me life? What gives me my connection to God ultimately?
Okay,
That's what gives me life.
awesome. Awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's get started.
Mhm.
Could you define mindset and manifestation?
Yeah. So mindset, it's interesting. Mindset are patterns of mind, right?
Okay.
Mind is movement. What is it a movement of? It's a movement of consciousness. And we have different levels of consciousness. So mind isn't just the mental body, it's also the emotional body, spiritual body, level of consciousness, physical level of consciousness, soul level of consciousness. So it's multi-layered. So mindset is not just what you think, but it's what you feel and your body's intelligence, and then the spirit behind all of that as well.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. I feel like a lot of people have a different thought when it comes to mindset. And I know I did in the beginning. Um, I just thought it was something I think and I do it. And I just stayed with that thought. And I didn't really think there was so much more to it. How important is the right type of mindset? Does it play a factor in the manifestation process?
So the mind, meaning what we think, what we feel, as well as our nervous system, has to be in accordance to what we want to manifest, right? And it's got to be in alignment as well. So, like for example, if someone wants to manifest a lot of prosperity, a lot of wealth in their life, they can think prosperous, but they must also feel prosperous and wealthy now, not waiting until whatever they want to manifest happens, but it has to be now. So the nervous system has to be acclimated to that reality as well, right? So this the right means it has to be in resonance with energetically with that reality. So yes, there has to be an alignment, there has to be a resonance in order for the manifestation to take place. Now, one thing that I was explaining to some of my clients is, for example, if generationally in our ancestry, wealth and prosperity has not really been a reality, then we have to understand that in the now, as we're creating a new reality, we're manifesting something new, it's going to take time to create those new neural pathways in our consciousness, in our, which is represented in our physiology as well, like in our with neuroplasticity. It's going to take time to like make those new grooves, those new patterns, right? So it's almost like when we're pioneers in breaking like generational trauma and generational you can even say curses, so to speak, It's like we're taking a machete and we're going into like the raw jungle. So we got to like hack away. We're the first ones to hack away and create that new pathway of different levels of consciousness for that reality to come into the physical realm.
I know in my own life, when I was trying to change my mindset, it was difficult. And I didn't realize how much generational curses existed. Like, and, so I didn't realize, like, this is something that a lot of my family members have dealt with. And this is a thing that has kept us behind a lot. Okay. Give me 1 second, please.
Sure.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah. Go sit down. Go sit down.
Sorry.
Okay.
What was I saying? And yeah, I didn't understand that it's something that, sits in your DNA. Like
Yeah.
you don't realize that it's a part of you because it's been a part of you for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, really changed my outlook once I realized I was one of the first people trying to change some things that have happened in my life that have happened throughout my family's lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was a really big turning point for me when I was like, okay, I'm the first to deal with this.
Right.
I'm the first that's going to get through this. I'm the
Right.
first person that's going to make sure my kids don't have to go through this. And it really helped me decide I wanted different.
Mm.
And I started, doing the things I needed to do in order to have different, which was hard in the beginning. Like it was really hard in the beginning. But
Yeah.
like the longer you go with it,
Yeah.
the easier it gets. Like it's really gets more simple the longer you deal with it. And I
Yeah.
feel like that, it helps the mindset because it's changing. It's something different.
Yeah. Exactly. You're
So
unfolding. There's an unfolding process that comes along with the whole journey.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so what are your stages of manifestation? How can manifestation improve my everyday life? And can stress affect what I manifest?
So the different stages of manifestation, it's a great question. I've totally lived these stages. So usually what happens is, like the sheeple mentality where we're just kind of like following the herd and we're doing what our environment was what we were exposed to has conditioned us to do. Um so that's where a person it has no awareness. That's actually number one. That's stage number one. There's no awareness yet until a person kind of looks at their life and they're like, you know what? I think my life can be different. This is actually not what I want. So it's almost like the soul or the spirit in a person wakes up and they step back from the physical experience and just like, this is not what I want. And then they start defining, well, this is what I want. So they start consciously making an intention of what they want to bring into their life. So that's a second stage. The first stage, though, is when someone is very much in victim mindset because they think that they're at the whim of whatever the economy or anything external to them. People could be at the whim of like their bank accounts. They could be at the whim of what their spouse thinks or what their friends think. So that's being like giving the power away continuously. Then when they start going into awareness with like stage two, they start realizing, okay, I want to reclaim my power.
Yeah.
I can now start intentionally affirming what I do want to see. I want to, and they start seeing the changes, right? They start um, feeling better. Like maybe a lot of it is how we feel about ourselves. Like they'll start affirming more positive things. They have more self love for themselves. And then the worldview starts to change. And then on stage number 3, there's almost like a part where there's so much consumption of the information because you just love it so much, right? It can get to the point where it can get, it's interesting. There's so much, because we have to understand the mind from many different, from different levels. You have a conscious level of thinking, which is all like book knowledge, like consuming this type of content right here on podcasts and all that stuff. But then through repetition and through like the unfoldment process of the soul, that person will start getting emotionally involved with the material and actually start acting and putting it into practice. But stage 3 is where, when there's so much consumption, it can get confusing for a person too, because they're reading from this book, they're listening to this thought leader, you know, and then it comes to the point where like, and the things in their lives may not be shifting that much yet too. They're still noticing patterns that keep them going. So stage 4 is what I would call embodiment and involution. It's not just about understanding the ideas, but it's actually being the ideas. You're actually walking the ideas. It's funny, like when people pray, like, oh, I want more love in my life, or I want more courage. What's going to be delivered to that person are the challenging situations in which you must become that. Meaning you're going to come across people that you probably don't like, because you want love, right? You want to embody the love. So you're going to have to be like, yeah, well, here it goes. I'm going to be love now. Same thing with courage. Like, oh my God, you're going to be faced with these situations where you have to step up and you're like, I've got to be courageous now. I have to be this person. So that's stage 4. That's a real embodiment stage of manifestation. Because when we actually embody, like, let's say, these frequencies of courage, of love, of prosperity, that's when everything really starts changing in our lives. It's not just intellectual understanding of things. It's what we just live, who we are. So I think that's the 4 stages. Now, let me go over involution. Involution means this. Involution means, okay, I have all this intellectual understanding. I come across entrepreneurs who are at that stage. They consumed a lot of information. But now, stage 4 is really upping the mindfulness game. It's like, okay, let's really pay attention what's going on now. Okay, like, what's triggering me right now? Right? What am I really feeling right now? And why am I feeling it? That's the clue. That's the pattern that needs to be uncovered. The clue is, okay, I'm feeling this, right? Because of some past thing that happened. So that's the real involutionary. That's the inward work that needs to be done. Before, it was more outward, looking for the sources from outside of you. But now you're looking for the kingdom within.
I think with a lot of through my journey, I didn't understand the amount of information I was going to take in. It was a lot, especially in the beginning. Like, and I was like, I want to learn everything. I want to do everything. And it was like, I had to, rein that in and really focus on what I wanted. And, that was something I hadn't thought about in my life, where, you think you want certain things, but you really don't. It's
Right.
something, deep down that you really want. That's not the thing you think you want in the first place.
Yeah.
And I had to really, like I said, focus on it. And slowly I started seeing change. And I'm a very impatient person. So when I don't see change quickly, I think something's wrong and I don't usually follow the process. Or I was like that. And I, realized that the thing I needed was patience out of most things. Like, first, if I could get patience, then everything else would come to me. And so slowly I started working on my patience. And I'm still working on it. Like, I'm still not there yet, but I'm far closer than I was. And being, accepting that and being happy with that and seeing that I'm making progress, even though it's not as fast as I want it to be.
What I'm
And I think
hearing
that,
too, yeah. Right, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, what I'm hearing is it's interesting because it's really about letting go and letting God. That's a funny thing about manifestation because we tend to think, well, we want to control it so much, but the truth is the universe and God controls more than we do, right? So that can be like our egos are really put in check during the whole manifestation journey.
Yes. I'm definitely humbled a lot more
Me
than I
too.
used to be. Like,
Right.
it's just, I'm like, okay. I thought I was in control of that situation. I am definitely not.
Right.
I should have known better. Like,
Right.
and, but, we learn and we take those lessons and we help it improve us.
Yeah.
And, in that improvement, we've made progress. And I feel like a lot of people don't see their progress being made. And it deters them from to like keep the journey going. And I know at least that was myself, for myself, that was it for the beginning of it. Like I was like, why am I still angry all the time? I was like, well, you're angry because you're making yourself angry.
Right.
And I'd be like, oh, I'm like, oh, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I see that now and I'm gonna remember that for next time. And so like the next time I was starting to get angry, I'm like, see, you're doing it again.
You're doing it
You're just
again.
doing it again. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, and you're like, but you caught it this time. So it's like, small baby steps, but you get what you want. And the universe provides more of what you really want.
And you know what's interesting, Mark? When I'm hearing, it's actually good that there's a delay because during the delay is what we call the gestation period. We're being refined in that period. It's almost like we're being given a test to become the person that can, again, we get the manifestation, what we want, and we're able to keep it.
Yeah.
And that's what, I had if I may, I'll share this with the audience. I was having a very deep meditative experience. Okay. And what I saw was it looked like an oblong orb and it was like glowing. It was like a soft white color. And I asked the meditation why I was seeing what I was seeing. Now you may have heard, right? Like whenever we have like an affirmation or a thought of what we want, it's almost like creating a seed in our mind. Then when we plant it into the subconscious mind, it goes through a gestation period, like any seed physically. It has to germinate in the soil, take root, and then it starts popping up above the surface of the soil, which is when we start seeing the actual physical manifestation in the physical realm, right? So in my meditation, I saw this beautiful glowing white orb. It was oblong shaped. And I asked, why am I seeing this? It was very bizarre. And the the message that I received at that moment was, it's a good seed that I created, right? This was the message. You don't have the right soil yet to germinate this seed. And I didn't understand, and I didn't know anything about the universal laws. I didn't know anything about the conscious, subconscious at all at this time. That was the message that I received. And that's what I realized. And as I work with my clients, I go, wow, the gestation period, the reason why there's a delay, between when we formulate an idea and then when it actually manifests physically is because sometimes our minds, which are basically the soil, it's being cultivated. Like you can take a seed, right? You can take a seed and you can place it in like in soil or ground that like it's like I have a visually in my mind. It's almost like a cracked ground. You know what I mean? That, or you can place a seed in someone's mind, subconscious mind, where it's like rich volcanic soil, and that baby will just grow like fast.
Yeah. I think we go through periods of different soil. I think, our minds, when we are, fighting against something, the soil becomes tougher to use. And it
Mhm.
just doesn't let it grow like it would if it was in more fertile soil, more acceptable soil. And I think that's a problem we all have sometimes is making sure that we have the right soil at any given time. But that's what we learn, and
Right.
that's where we grow is the fact that we realize we have to change our soil. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
like, it's just like a farmer, you have to rotate your crops
That's
and
right. Yeah.
you have to rotate your soil and your mindset.
They have to
And
till that soil, right? That's
yeah,
how they. Yeah. Yeah.
like it's all a part of, making something grow. Like we have to go through all the same processes that we do with plants that we, for ourselves, except it's in the mind.
And I feel that a big part of that, if I may, is
Okay.
the healing process that we all because when we heal, we also um as I was listening to you, a big part of that cultivation of soil is how we perceive ourselves. It's how much do we love ourselves too, right? Like in a very deep, profound way. It's not like it's also what when we cultivate so much more compassion for ourselves, we also respect and we love the different orphaned, the different parts of ourselves due to trauma and all these trials and tribulations being here on earth, which is that's the truth. This is a big school that we're in right now,
Yeah.
and it's not easy. So when we can kind of honor, wow, this has been tough, and I commend myself for going through this journey. And if we can really cultivate that level of compassion and understanding, to me, that's a big part of cultivating that soil.
Makes sense. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, like it really does do more for us to have more self love. And that's just like we would do a plant. And, speaking to the plant in a positive way
Yeah.
changes the makeup of the growth of that plant. Like
Right.
you can, we talk to our plants and we do all that. And it actually does help
It
the
does.
plant grow. Like, and
Yes.
we should do that for ourselves as well.
Yes.
Um, let's see. Is there such a thing as negative manifestation? Can
Yes.
can manifesting bad things into their lives because of their need or negative mindset? Does stress affect my mindset?
Yeah. You know what's interesting about the whole negative and positive thing is when things pop up negatively, let me if I may give you an example, okay? I had a very negative experience, what seemed like it was a negative experience with a former business partner. Okay, we essentially broke up, and this is part of the evolutionary part of manifestation. Instead of like feeling like, of course, I did feel a little bit of offended and all that stuff because of my ego, but when I kind of calmed down from that, I looked at the pattern. I'm like, okay, who am I that manifested this result? And I do this exercise with looking at identity. You know, it was really interesting. That same pattern with that business partner was the same pattern I have with my husband.
Wow.
And I realized who's the common denominator is me. And I'm like, so I was seeing this pattern, and this is why it's a blessing. Even though it's negative, it's a blessing. It depends on how we take hold of it. You know what I mean? How we perceive it, how we harvest from it. And I realized that there was flaws in my leadership style. Big lesson, right? So that's why it's beautiful when things do persist in terms of a pattern. That's where the soul level comes in. It's like, okay, what am I not learning yet in order for me to move on to the next season?
Makes sense.
who am I? Because this is so unconscious. We're so used to being this person, but what does she or he do now? What kind of decisions, micro decisions, unconscious decisions? Now there are more consciously aware, and I'm more consciously aware of that I will make now, so that I don't keep on manifesting the same thing.
That hit me hard. Is I deal with that a lot, like repeating things, and I always ask myself, why am I repeating this stuff, like this thing?
Yeah.
And realizing that it's me is the common denominator makes me want to change it. Like I do the work and learn why I'm doing the things I'm doing,
Hmm.
and seeing like why it literally repeats itself. And it doesn't matter the person, like it's always with multiple people,
Yep.
and you realize that it's you and not them, and how you need to change the way you're thinking, or change the mindset of the thing.
Yeah.
I realized that like the longer I talk usually in a conversation, the more negative I get, and I didn't realize that I was even being negative.
Mm-hmm.
And like it just became so natural over time that
Mm-hmm.
it just happened. And I was like, why do I do that? And it was like, well, your family does that. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, once you realize, okay, my family doesn't, and it's like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. And then
Yeah.
from there, it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. So it's like, I'm going to make conscious decisions to make sure I don't do that anymore.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
it's a snowball effect of
Yeah.
things that ultimately will change the way you think if you desire it.
Exactly. And you're really touching upon the self mastery aspect, because that could have gone, a different way. Like, oh, that person made me, or this situation made me feel. You see, that's a different. That's part of that victim mindset. Versus, wait, let me step back as a soul, as a spirit, having a spiritual. I'm sorry, well, spiritual as well, but a physical experience, and let me look at this objectively, right? And then you make different decisions. So kudos to you. Good.
I'm hoping, everyone gets that chance in life to do that. I feel like it's part of our journey to change.
It
And,
is.
we literally, it's just like a butterfly. Like we start off as a caterpillar, we only know certain things.
Yeah.
Like our life is one thing, and it's very focused on that thing.
Yeah.
And because it's focused on that thing, we miss out on so much other stuff because we just don't see it.
Yeah.
And then literally when you go into the catalyst for changing into a butterfly,
Oh, yes.
you see so much more,
Yeah.
and you realize so much more that you didn't before. And it's scary, but ultimately that it's for your best. Like it's for the best change in you to see those truths and realize that they're there. It's like with Plato's allegory of the cave.
Yeah.
Like you literally step outside the cave and see the world for what it truly is.
Right. Right.
And, it opens your mind to so much more. And the first thing we usually want to do is tell somebody else and, want to change their whole mindset too. And say, but we can't do that. They have to go through their own chrysalis state in order to achieve becoming the butterfly. And
Yeah.
we can only do so much. Like we can guide people there, but ultimately it has to be them that wants the change. And there's a thing I used to say was effort equals action plus change over time. And you literally have to, if you want to provide the effort it takes, that action, that want to change and that want to do something different. And just in that, you
Hmm.
literally start to change your mindset. Like
Yeah.
you literally, with that one thought, it literally puts you on a whole different like life path
Yeah.
because you decided that you want something different. And because of that, now you can focus your life toward that thing. And I feel like
Exactly.
it just goes together so much that we don't even realize we're changing our mindset. when we're changing our mindset. It's like
Right.
it's something
Right.
that happens exactly when we decide that difference, and that's when the path changes, and we don't even realize it. And I feel like that happens a lot with change. Is when it happens, we've already gone through it, and we never even thought about it, or we did think about it, but we just never
You just
see
really
it because of
consciously aware of it. Yeah. It's
yeah, like yeah, you just literally start and you're just like, oh. And then, a few years down the line, you're like, oh, that went an entirely different place than it usually would have. And, you just, it's remarkable the change it can do to someone.
It's interesting. I had a podcast prior to this, and the leader, it was a very open conversation. The leader talked about quantum leaping, just brought it up, and immediately as you're talking about the caterpillar, it reminded me of quantum leaping. Because what's interesting is when we look at our own conditioning, right? Like what you're saying, like all these thoughts are so automatic. We have like 70,000 thoughts that go through an individual's mind on any given day, and we're not consciously aware of what's really going on, automatically in our minds. Like we would go nuts if we were to be consciously aware of everything that goes on in terms of thoughts and emotions. But if you can think about like how a caterpillar is so perfect in the way that it crawls, right? Like it can crawl forward, backward, up, down. But then with the transformation, it has to completely break down in the chrysalis. So a big part of what happens when we quantum leap, it can feel like things are falling apart in our lives. It can be part of the transformation manifestation journey. And then here from the chrysalis to the butterfly. And the big question is, am I willing? Am I willing to go through that breakdown? And am I willing to fly very imperfectly as a butterfly versus being really perfect at what I know? Because that's all that I've been,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
literally, go ahead, go ahead.
No, it's funny because I didn't bring this up during that conversation, but it's kind of like juxtaposing, I guess, or dovetailing to
Yeah.
like what we were talking about before. And that really is a big part of it. And I think we're, you know, notice how it's perfected in crawling. Crawling.
Yeah.
We can perfect mediocrity. You know what I mean? We can
Yeah.
perfect pain. We can
Yeah.
perfect whatever. But are we willing to break down that conditioning, let it all fall away, let it die, essentially, in order to be born again as this new version?
And I feel like it's something that happens over and over again. It's not something that you do once and it's like a one and done. It's like you'll repeat going through situations that try to bring you back to your old self. And, we can learn how to make that even less. Like, we can put forth the effort into even making sure that doesn't happen over and over and over again. It's depending on what we do. I've noticed that in my own life. Like the more effort I put towards, I'm not going to go through this situation again, the more it changes my mindset
Mm.
to notice it when it's coming and gives me time to prevent it. Like I can just be like,
Yeah.
I see it coming. No, 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 no. And I move around that. And that's become a lot easier the longer I self-assess and make sure that I'm doing the things I need to be doing to get to where I want to go.
Mm.
And it literally the synchronicities that happen when I get it right, to let me know I got it right. Or it's
Right,
amazing
right,
to
right.
me that
Yeah.
things will happen to make you be like, oh, well then, okay, no
Yeah.
better. And it's like, you just keep going. It makes you want to do more. And like that's been a part of my journey. And that's what keeps me going
Mm.
is the fact that I notice more the things that I don't want. And
And then
it
switch it.
makes
Yeah, I'm gonna switch it
yeah, and
immediately.
just
Yeah.
switch it.
Right.
And, it's amazing to me that, like, I never thought about it before. And it was like, well, your mindset was on something different before. You
Mm.
couldn't see that change. You couldn't see that want because your wants were somewhere else at the time. And you just,
Or you were conditioned just to expect what you expected, right?
yeah,
That's why
yeah,
I was expressing in earlier this morning that we tend to remain stuck only because of lack of imagination. That's it. And it seems almost cliche, but one of my mentors, Bob Proctor, said this many times. Like, we're only limited. We think it's anything outside of us, but that's a hard pill to swallow for majority of people. Like, no, you don't understand that this happened to me and this happened to me. And no. Actually, the only real limitation is weakness of what you focus on. Like, I was just explaining, like, I have clients that could say they're complaining about debt or whatever, right? It's like, okay, that's real, that has manifested. But imagine just focusing all your mind on creating value in the marketplace that serves other people in a way that people are willing to pay for it. That's the creation of money.
yeah.
That's the new model of not being in a job, right? That's creating your own security in your life, right? So it's anyway, I just got off on a tangent, but you know what I'm talking about. Like,
Yeah, but
it's a very interesting growth
it is. It is. It definitely is.
and what we focus
But
on. I think that's a big part. Oh, and then imagination too is literally, and I think a lot of people are suppressed with this because we're not taught this in the traditional schooling system. We're not
yeah,
taught to use our imaginations.
yeah, that's true. And I mean, unless you're an art student,
Right.
like they really dull down the use of imagination. It's always learn this fact. This is how everything went.
Yeah.
Trust this and nothing else. And
And
it's
you know
like,
what? Right. And Mark, and everyone's scared about AI.
yeah, everyone's
It,
terrified.
everyone's terrified. It's like, but do you understand like what we have access to? I
As
mean,
a tool.
and
I mean, it's a tool that it could be to help everybody get
right.
the things that they want. Like, this is not something that, you know, like everybody's so scared it's going to take over. And it's like, but if humanity uses it as a tool to make life more efficient and get those things that they want, it's an amazing tool.
And
Like, if you,
I would like to add, Mark, if we were to understand who we really are
yeah,
and what we really have access, because we humanity, I think there are cultures that really understand who we really are, really understand who we really are, and mainly like in the East. And I think parts in the West too. But if we really truly to understand like how powerful we really are, my goodness.
yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely
Yeah.
agree. Just because, I mean, we do so much, like, for what we know, we're the only thing in this universe like us. And, that gives us power to see things in a way that other things don't, and to create things that other things haven't, and literally take that all over the universe. We can
Yeah.
literally do anything, and anything we put our mind to, we usually make possible, which is a tremendous thing. Like, we literally have an idea that comes out of nowhere, and we decide that we're going to put forth effort into that thing and make it reality. So we
Mm-hmm.
take something from nothing and then create it in reality. And it's like, what other creature does that? And
Right.
people don't
Right.
see the power in humanity and to see how powerful we actually are because we've been programmed not to see it. Like, they don't see all of the capabilities that we are able to achieve. And we're amazing creatures. I feel like we're just,
Yeah.
there's nothing like us, and we need to share that more with each other. And if we have to learn that lesson of our imaginations are our power,
Yeah.
and
And it's also a
Absolutely.
double-edged power.
Yes.
Because if you look at it, I mean, look at like what the things that we're exposed to a lot, like with mass media, really think about it. Like, how is our imagination being stimulated majority of the time?
Yeah.
I guess it depends on what you watch, right? But like probably I don't know if there's like some sort of like data about the percentage of categories of content that's out there, like in like streaming services, let's say.
Yeah.
But how is our imagination being stimulated, and is it being used and guided in a way that will create a better humanity?
Yeah.
Well, of course, we've got your podcast. We've got many other, avenues as well that are steering the consciousness in a more productive, peaceful, loving, right, um, direction. And it's very important to be continue to do this work.
Yeah. I mean, because it can literally go anywhere. Like because we can do everything, we can literally have
Right,
information out there that's about anything.
right,
And it takes the person to guide what information they're taking in. And because especially now with all the algorithms we have in products today,
right,
they steer you to whatever you like the most.
right,
And because of that, you just get more of the same
right,
information. Like, your Google's connected to everything, your YouTube is connected to everything, and what you watch is what you get.
right. The
And
cognitive, is it called cognitive dissonance, right? Like it.
yeah,
Yeah, so and I actually have been in contact. I worked with her for a little bit. She's developing technology to help offset that because it can be very detrimental to someone's mental health. And I believe, and I know that they know this, that social media was a factor in the extremity of perceptions, like political
yeah,
perceptions and political
yeah,
ideologies, like running rampant, across the globe. So, um, very deep, complex subject.
yeah, yeah, very so much so. It it's really. I wish I had more content that because I watch a lot of stuff that's for my mind and
Yeah,
or art. Like,
that's
I
cool.
watch, a lot of creative things. And when I say creative, I mean in the avenues of math, science, philosophy, religion, spirituality, like all of these things. But a lot of people don't. And a lot of the information they're bringing in is, I hate to say it, but it's like garbage, just, and you're taking in lots of it. And then everything that, they use in a day, their phones, their watches, their computers, all is giving them more of the same. So it's like,
Yeah,
you, how do you get out of that? And it takes that mindset change. It
yeah.
takes something that makes you want to say, I want to see something different. And we
Well,
all have that.
yeah.
It doesn't happen as much as it should, I think.
Well, I feel with what you're just saying, this is what I'm getting. Um, Let me give you an example. Last night, and I had to make like a real decision. Do I really want to invest the time in watching this movie? And it was the movie called Iron Claw. It's
Okay.
based on the true story of like this family of brothers, and they were like in the wrestling industry, and they show like anyway. But it's a tragic story. It's a tragic story. I won't go too much into it. But you know what? From a trauma informed perspective and from a mindset, because doing my own internal work and working with other people, I could see the value in watching that movie, even though it is tragic and it was very sad, because you can learn a lot from the experiences, like everyone's life stream we can learn from, right? Like that's why we want to like pick up the books of like great thinkers and leaders, because we want to learn from their life,
Yeah.
right? So I think what I'm bringing this up because I realize if I were a different person who didn't do any personal development, I'm watching that movie, I would perceive that movie completely different.
Yeah.
It would just be like, oh God, how sad, like, oh, like,
Yeah.
I will probably be blaming the father, the way he influenced his sons and all that stuff. But I actually understand from a different perspective of why things pan out the way that they did. And
Yeah.
there's like suicide involved and all this stuff. But anyway, um, So the conclusion that I can, as I'm talking to you, is no matter what all this stuff is giving us, and whatever the percentage of garbage it may be, there's a lot of violence in content out there, right? If a soul were to work on their own mindset, that's almost like the antidote, Mark. I'm almost convinced now because
Yeah,
they
because they
work
can
on
see
their
it
own.
differently. Yeah.
They'll see everything differently. They're going to be so much more discerning as well, and they won't be, because Bob talked about this in one of his live trainings, and I was really floored. Bob Proctor is who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He said that if you notice in like majority, he talked about this, majority of like stuff out there is like about murder and killing and all that stuff. And if you think about it, when we watch this stuff, our subjective subconscious minds are being wide open. They're breaking wide open because the shock value of watching this stuff just opens up our subconscious mind, and it makes us very susceptible to suggestions. Okay. So, um, what I would say is for someone to open up and go along their own journey of manifestation of what they want to create, and they start mastering themselves, they start mastering their levels of consciousness, no matter what is out there and they're being exposed to it, they're going to be a lot more discerning.
That's true. I know in my own life that I used to watch a lot of horror movies, a lot of violent stuff,
Yeah.
a lot of angry stuff, and it really showed me who I was because at that time I was angry. I wasn't physically violent, but I was
Mm,
angry enough to be violent in my mind.
mm,
And it was all of this stuff outwardly, I could see it. And it made me feel like there was, a reason for it. And I knew like
right,
that's how I felt. So that's what I watched all the time. And that's what I
right.
felt all the time. And when I decided I wanted different, it changed what I viewed.
Good.
And I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
Like I literally didn't even notice the change until one day I was watching something and once something became violent, like I was just like, oh, and it like hit me harder. And I was like, no, I don't want to watch this.
Right.
And same thing with certain music, because music is another thing
Yeah.
that hits us very hard, and it can remind us of things that happened in the past. This past week, I decided I was going to start listening to some of the old music I used to listen to, and bring back some of my old self that I wanted to put together with my new self.
Right. Right.
And I would start to listen to the songs and they would just come off as overwhelming. And I was like, why can't I listen to this anymore? And it was like, because you've changed.
Right.
You don't feel the same way
Right.
anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you don't have the need for that type of music in your life anymore.
Right.
And I was
Right.
like, oh, wow, that's different.
Yeah.
And so I was listening to a lot more positive music and a lot more calming music, and it was because I feel calmer and happier in my life that I don't need the expression of that music to define me like it used to.
What I'm really hearing too, Mark, is what's interesting is, okay, so because of the transformation that you've been through, like your nervous system has also transformed. So when you were being exposed to that old type of music, there was no longer a resonance
Yeah,
because your nervous system is already acclimated to the transformation. I think the same thing happens with what we eat, actually, right? Some
yeah,
foods don't resonate with us anymore because foods have frequency. We tend to, and I'm not saying everyone go vegetarian and vegan. I'm not that personally, but what I've noticed is, when we eat like fruits and vegetables, it's direct frequency from the sun versus like an animal that eats the vegetation, and it's a more indirect energy consumption of the sun itself when we eat meat, right?
yeah.
And for some people, and I know people like this, they tend to, as the frequency rises, they tend to be more in resonance with, let's say, fruits and vegetables and all that stuff. But it doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah, I literally have been going through that because I am a meat eater. I am a carnivore of carnivores, and the higher my vibration gets, the less meat I eat.
Wow.
And I didn't even realize that, like, I won't eat beef anymore. And it's not
Right.
because I have anything against beef or I
Right.
feel like you shouldn't eat beef. I just don't crave it as much as I used to. Like, I
Exactly.
might have a burger every now and then, but as
Yeah.
far as like steaks and just heavy meat, I just don't feel like I need it. Like, I might eat some pork here and there
Right.
and it's something light or chicken, and I'm by no means ever gonna be a vegan.
Right.
Uh,
Exactly.
like, I know I love meat,
Although
but I
I love
know
vegans too.
yeah, I love vegans too, I do. But I know for myself, that is
Right.
not the way for
It's not
me,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
and I still I still eat less meat, and I just find that really interesting because
Yeah.
who would have known that it would change so much because my mindset changed on something that I didn't feel had anything to do with this stuff, and it's
Right.
changed so much, like, and you see it, but you see it in after effect, like, in hindsight, you're just like, you just realize it one day, and you're like, "Oh, I've been doing this for a while now." Like, I stopped drinking
Right.
and never realized I had stopped drinking until a year and a half later.
Oh wow, that's so funny because you just have to making that decision.
Yeah,
Like on the daily, like, oh no, 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 no.
yeah, and,
That's
like, you just
interesting.
literally like, after a year and a half, I was like, "I have not had a drink in over a year and a half." Now it's been, like, 3.5 years, and
Wow.
I just one day just decided, I was like, "I wanna drink today," and then that just kept going with, "I don't wanna drink tomorrow either," and then
Yeah.
it was like, "I don't wanna drink the next day either," and I was a person that drank every day.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah, you are reminding me of something right now. It's like, okay, this is what's coming to me. There's no set way. There's no dogma with this. But some people they think there is, right? Like, oh, you got
yeah,
to eat a certain way or you got to do this. No, actually, there is no certain way.
yeah, it's
It's
different for
different for
everybody.
everybody. It really is. And you just have to honor, but just know this, and this is what I'm hearing from this conversation, that everything is frequency, energy, and vibration. Like I was I'm very proud of this video. It got like the most views. But the number one question I get is one of the main questions I get is how do you handle negative people?
Yeah,
Okay. And how do you handle negative people but is by not being negative. You can't be a vibrational compatible frequency to that negativity. You see what I'm saying? Like
yeah, yeah, totally.
it's we and then in that video I was explaining, and I'll explain here, like if we look at like all the notes of the piano or whatever we play, instrument we play, they're just notes, right? They're all certain frequencies. There's
Yeah,
certain notes that go along with other notes, right? Like very
yeah,
harmonious, but there are no notes that don't go along with other notes at all.
yeah.
So we're like all these notes on the piano. And we just know, and we have to look at what's popping up because somewhere in our consciousness there's compatibility. That's why it's here. So again, it goes back to that involution again.
Some notes are gonna be definitely harmonious, and some notes are just gonna sound terrible with you. But we keep it moving because the song's
Yeah.
not over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like
Like,
that. It's so
the music's always going. Yeah, it's always composing, it's always going, and it's
yeah,
always changing. And at some point, that note might become harmonious with yours. It's just at the moment, it isn't.
right.
But things can happen
It
to make,
eventually.
if you add certain notes at a certain time, then it will fit. But maybe not always. Like, it's always that fluctuation of the music. And that was always
Exactly.
something I always talked about is the symphony that's always playing, like weird but notes in the larger symphony that's played throughout the universe.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's one, I love how like if you universe, like one verse is one, there's really only one vibration, really, but
Yeah,
at different levels of frequency.
yeah.
And that's
I
that
feel
it's so imagine a world that understands that. It's like, oh, you're a reflection of me and I'm a reflection of you.
Yeah.
And if I were to hurt you, means I'm going to hurt me.
Yeah.
And if I take care of you, means I'm going to take care of me. We would live in a very, very different place.
That's true. That's very true. Because I mean, we're all like, as a humanity goes, we are one being and we're human.
Yep.
We're just one human having thousands of experiences. Like each one of us represents a group of experience that are going to be had throughout this life.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the more we help each other, the more we guide each other, the more we work with each other, the more we play with each other. Like you know, all of these things help the experience and fulfill the fact that we're trying to reach every experience.
Mm-hmm.
And because, you know, each person is their own experiences, we create a multiverse
Right.
of different situations.
Right.
Like we're all trying to see how many experiences we can have. And it literally, we all create all experience. And as long as there's people, we'll have different experiences. And so it shows you how small we are on the scale of we're never going to know all the experiences we could have ever had. But for every person's here, we have a version of those experiences. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's why, to enjoy in the very moment what is unfolding. That's a big part of it, like that mindfulness. I got a client right now who's having a really hard time. It's really interesting. She's on this trip right now, and I've been through a lot of trials and tribulations. Believe me, and I continue to go through them. And the beauty is the experience itself.
Yeah. So let's get some of these last few questions out of the way. If you could have any superpower, what would it be? And who is your favorite superhero in comics?
Okay, so my my favorite superhero at this time is Doctor Strange. I love that character. I resonate with that character a lot. Because, and I think all of us go through this, like we have to like face our egos,
Yeah.
and then the universe will kick your ass. Period.
Yes, it will.
They will just kick your ass, and you're like, okay. Like you think you got
Yeah.
it together, and you don't. And it's good. It's good. That's the path towards actually, I will dare say, enlightenment and mastery.
Yeah.
And that's why I love it. And I love how like he just his whole worldview just look at the multiverses and all that stuff. And that's my favorite superhero is Doctor Strange.
See, I like to ask that question because you can tell a lot about somebody by the comic book character they pick. Like they're
Yeah.
literally they've become archetypes for people. A friend of mine, he does this when he meets people. His first question he asked him was, what superpower would they have, and
Right.
who's their favorite superhero?" And it lets him discern if he wants to be around these people or not
Right.
because of who they choose.
So
And
I
it's
love
funny how,
Thanos, right?
yeah, like, you know, and you're like, oh no, maybe I should not be around you. Like, you know, be around this person because I mean, it really does show you like the type of person someone is. Like, because if they say, like, I love Professor Xavier, well, you know, he's a handicapped man who has telepathy powers and he wants the best for the world. So it shows you this person has a want for
Yeah.
humanity to be the best in themselves. And, you know, you can show a lot of people. I usually choose the
Yeah.
Hulk, which, you know, for a lot of my life was filled with anger.
Right.
And I felt that anger pushed me to be a, you know, better
Right.
person.
Right.
But,
Right.
you know, learning how to master my anger before I
Right.
was able to, you know, help change everything. So it's like you can really see the nuances of from the characters that how people choose them. And I feel like it's so much fun to ask people that question, and that's why.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're running out of time, and I have my last question for you, which is, what is the question you have for the
Oh my
next
gosh.
guest.
Okay, yeah, I did think about this question. Ooh, oh my gosh. Okay. My question is, oh, when did you realize what was the pivotal time in your life, a pivotal moment in your life where you realized um you had reached a different spiritual level?
Well, it's a good one. Can't wait to see what my next guest says about that.
Nice.
Jennifer, thank you for being on the show. I want to have you back because I really want to talk to you about working with Bob Proctor. Like,
Oh yeah.
I'm sad that we didn't get to that, so I'm gonna have you back on the show for that. Um, how can my listeners get in touch with you if they would like your services?
I would they can email me at Jenn at reachyourhighestpotential. That's all one word .com. And just find me on Facebook and just like friend me and direct message me and we can have a chat.
Thank you for being on the show so much. I like to end the show with thank you for today, thank you for yesterday, thank you for tomorrow. Always remember to question your reality, and at every end there is a beginning. Thank you once again for being on the show. And you guys take care, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. And that wraps up another thought provoking episode of What Are You Even Talking About? We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the discussion we had today. Before we go, we want to extend a huge thank you to our amazing guest. Your insights and expertise truly enriched our conversation, and we're grateful for your contribution. And of course, a massive thank you to you, our incredible audience. Your engagement, questions, and feedback make this podcast what it is. As we wrap up, let's take a moment to reflect. Thank you for today. Thank you for yesterday. Thank you for tomorrow. Always remember to question your reality, and at every end, there is a beginning. We love the journey we're on with each and every one of you. Keep those questions coming, keep challenging the status quo, and keep exploring the uncharted territories of your mind. We can't wait to dive into another riveting conversation in our next episode. Until then, take care, stay curious, and keep asking, what are you even talking about? Don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and connect with us on social media. We'll catch you in the next one. You guys take care.